Welcome to The Tech Between Us, a podcast that takes a look at the past, present, and future of some of today's most influential technologies. Hi, I'm Raymond Yin, your host and director of technical content at Mouser Electronics, a leading global distributor of semiconductors and electronic components. Today, we're talking about immersive technology, most commonly thought of as virtual reality, but as we'll discuss later, the vision aspect is only one part of the entire immersive experience. As a huge fan of science fiction, immersive technology has always been a fascination. From the holodecks in Star Trek to The Matrix, and more recently Ready Player One, immersive technologies have allowed us to take the plunge into virtual worlds, interact with a variety of characters, and use interactive and virtual tools to help us solve problems. As a gamer, Ready Player One really hit home with me when it came out in 2018. Most of the technology shown in the movie readily available now, though with a hefty price tag, but the type of content shown and the types of interactions available are natural extensions of current MMORPGs and virtual worlds like Sims 4. VR hardware has come a long way since the disastrous Virtual Boy of 1995, with a market size just under $5 billion in 2021. But with roughly 55% of sales in the consumer space, it's clear that immersive tech is still primarily associated with gaming and entertainment applications, with a fragmented application base outside of it. Which begs the question, is immersive a technology in search of an application or just a killer app? To help me answer that question, I have with me today Mark Sage, the Executive Director of the Augmented Reality for Enterprise Alliance, or AREA. Mark, welcome to The Tech Between Us.
Thanks, Raymond. It's really exciting, and I'm honored to be here. Thank you.
We sure do appreciate your time. Can you talk for a moment about your background and the work of AREA? What do you guys do, and what your focus is?
Yeah, certainly. So I've been involved in being the executive director of the AREA for nearly 6 years now, in the next month or so. The AREA, as you mentioned, has a pinpoint focus on augmented reality in the enterprise space. And if you see a lot of the analysts and the speakers at the moment about augmented reality is focused on the enterprise space. But of course, there's lots of technologies that are talked around in this kind of immersive space is the kind of generic term we give it. So augmented reality is about putting digital content on top of the real world. And there's a few examples. The one example everyone mentions is Pokemon Go, which was a big craze not that long ago.
Played it myself.
Absolutely, and a lot of people did. And then, probably what you hear more about at the moment is virtual reality, when you're actually completely in that virtual world, and certainly from a gaming and an experience perspective. And then there's kind of other terms that banded around a lot, hear about XR and MR. Raymond, I'm kind of a very simple guy, really, and in myself, you're either in an immersive, completely virtual world, in a virtual world, or you're in the real world and putting that digital content on top of you. Okay, so I just make it really simple. There's these terms that overlap all of it, but really you're either in the virtual world, the augmented world, or the real world. And what we've been doing in the area is bringing kind of different parts of the ecosystem together to really help overcome some of the barriers to adoption of using this technology in an enterprise space. So we have a combination of the companies that are deploying it, and big names like Boeing, Medtronic, Welsh Water. There's a whole bunch of companies that are actually deploying AR now. And then a bigger group of the providers, and I'm sure we'll get into a bit more detail about what they are, but I break that down simply between hardware and software. And then the third group, we have a number of kind of non-commercial organizations that are helping the ecosystem. So universities, research institutes, government agencies, and standards organizations as well.
The organization covers the entire ecosystem of hardware, software, academia, and just kind of puts everybody together to have that common conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, VR, which is a great technology, but you can do it almost on a one-to-one basis. You kind of just put your headset on, you're in a virtual world.
Right.
With augmented reality, whilst a lot of it's still one-to-one, you are putting these new devices into the kind of work environment. It's not a training room or a separate room. You're actually on the shop floor or on the manufacturing floor. So, there's concerns and challenges to overcome there. And I'm sure we'll cover some of those a little bit later on. But bringing the ecosystem together to kind of learn from each other, to develop that best practice, and really build those partnerships that help everybody succeed is really important.
So, up until now, really, especially VR. But and we mentioned Pokemon Go. It's these technologies have pretty much been associated with gaming and entertainment, and it really sounds like that through some of the work that you guys are doing, that really enterprise is starting to take a serious look and make some serious investments towards whether we want to call it AR, MR, or XR at the moment.
Yeah, and I agree. And actually, I spent my kind of previous working career in the mobile space, which was completely the flip of that. It started as a consumer product. Mm-hmm. If you remember the kind of first smartphones, the Apples and the Android devices. And then after a while, enterprises started to say, hey, this is a great tool. This is a great platform. We can use it in the working environment. Interestingly, in the kind of XR space or the AR and VR space, it's flipped that. And it's kind of started, you see a lot more kind of growth and strength in the enterprise part. So that's been kind of interesting. I think, if we just kind of focus down on VR, what's been happening is companies can quite easily pick up, a VR package, the hardware and software. And what we've seen at the moment is they've been able to use it. It's a great tool for training. It'd be able to take this VR into their kind of environment, do things that they potentially couldn't do before, or train people rather than taking them out to these environments. If you think about, just think about some like wind turbines or even offshore kind of rigs. How do you get people? It's a costly, not only is it costly from a financial perspective, but kind of CO2 and time and everything. So, using VR to be able to show them these kind of things that get them almost hands-on, be it in a virtual world, it's made some real differences. I think it's been really interesting, especially with the COVID pandemic as well.
Right.
Being able to use this as a kind of a tool to get people to experience what it's like in the real world has been fantastic.
Many of your members are, some of these top-tier manufacturing companies. You mentioned Boeing. I also saw Lenovo as one of your members. From a manufacturing and an AR perspective, how are some of these companies using, some of these immersive technologies in their operation?
If I perhaps focus on the AR part, so putting digital content on top of the real world, the kind of last couple of years, I mentioned before about the kind of COVID pandemic, has seen a real explosion of one kind of key use case, what we call remote assistance. So again, if we kind of imagine a manufacturing line, in COVID, limited people were allowed into that factory. So if something, or into that manufacturing plant, if something goes wrong, there aren't the people there to be able to fix it. And not only is it lack of people, but it's lack of kind of knowledge and skills. So remote assistance, a real simple use case. You're able to go to where the problem is and either using a tablet or a mobile phone or a wearable device, you're able to connect with an expert anywhere in the world and, be able to show them what you're actually seeing. But that expert then can put digital content on your overlay, so you're actually seeing it, to tell you what to do, to be able to turn a bolt or lift this or whatever the kind of what needs to be done. So adding this visual kind of content and being able to speak to that expert and the expert being able to say, yes, you've done that, or no, you need to twist it a bit more or stuff like that, really allowed companies to save a considerable amount. If you think of kind of the ROI on that, basically you don't have to have somebody traveling to come and fix it. Your uptime increases because you can fix it so much quicker, and what you're also doing, and these are kind of some of the intangible things, you're upskilling those workers as well, because they begin to see it.
Yeah. I was just thinking, that could be used for mentoring and training. I mean, kind of like we've been talking about, but in a different way, rather than in a direct, kind of in that person's ear sort of way.
Yeah, and I guess that's another kind of problem. If we go on perhaps to another use case, which is really a little bit of a follow-on from remote assistance, and I call it guidance, so doing a step-by-step guidance. Previously, people on a manufacturing line, a young person would start, or any person would start, and they would sit on the shoulder of somebody looking at what they do.
Right.
Okay? So, again, COVID has caused problems with that. You can't stand that close. But also, you're looking and you're not actually working it, you're not feeling it, you're not doing it, you haven't got that kind of tactile feedback. And I think also what happens is when that person goes away, you have to have that memory to memorize what they've done and redo it, and you're not actually doing it to create muscle memory. So kind of guidance is a great way. I think it starts when I've seen the best experiences of this is they've taken the real experts and kind of recorded what they've actually done. And if you start to do that over multiple people, you can get together the best way of doing it because you look at the efficiencies of multiple people doing it. Mm-hmm. You've then created the most effective way of doing a step-by-step guide, and it could be anything. We'll just take an example, and this is not a great example, to be honest, of how you would use AR, but let's say putting on a tire onto a car. And what it would do is that either, again, tablet or preferably with a wearable because it keeps you hands-free.
Right.
It will actually show you what to do. It very clearly says, right, you need to do this, you need to turn this or twist this or whatever the kind of use case is. So it sounds like remote assistance, but this is for people that are doing a kind of a task within that either manufacturing or maintenance or whatever the kind of use case is. So, and again, what really the sweet spot, I think, for AR when it comes to these kind of things is about that infrequent, complex task. You wouldn't really want to do it with a car tire because you're probably putting tens, hundreds, if not thousands of car tires onto cars. And we know kind of robots do that. But if you think of those tasks, which are really kind of complex and you may do it, once in a blue moon. I can give you a good example. One of our members build those big aircraft carriers that you kind of see on Top Gun. Not the actual planes themselves, but where the planes land. Now, it takes them 7 to 8, up to 9 years to build one of those.
Right.
So some of those tasks aren't done that often. So whilst you have a number of kind of veterans who have been on the yard for a long period of time, when they leave and retire, that knowledge goes with them. So having this kind of guidance tool that you can bring new people on, can upskill really quick, and they don't have to do it that frequently because they get shown how to do it.
Right. Yeah. I mean, you have your knowledge base in an interactive environment that's immediately available to whatever user at whatever skill level they're at.
Yeah, and you touch on a really interesting point, Raymond, as well, because within AI, you'll also then be able to focus on the skills that person has and upskill them. So you kind of almost segment or categorize workers, but you very quickly, by using AI, you can upskill them to do other tasks. I always think of just recently, my washing machine broke down. And it's a big kind of issue. 2 days later, would you believe it, my dishwasher broke down. So now I can't wash my clothes, I can't wash my pots and pans. So a person came out to fix it. Now, using AR, that person could be or should be able to fix both of them almost straight away because we're using that guidance, or if the guidance doesn't work, the remote assistance use case. So kind of a great way of being able to cut down the time it takes. And as I mentioned, that person only travels once, and all of these kind of savings really allow companies to go back to being effective is kind of building stuff and making sure that they're completed on time.
Right. I mean, let the companies, design the product and use this knowledge base, and through and augmented reality to actually do the maintenance and the upkeep of it. Yeah,
and you touch on another really interesting use case, which I haven't seen yet, but I'm sure it's going to happen. It's kind of almost like a cradle to grave process where you would come up, let's say it's we'll call it a widget. So it's a complicated widget. You've used VR to design it. And I'll talk a little bit maybe about collaboration using XR in a minute, but you've worked together with anybody around the world to collaborate and design this new widget, and you're using VR to do it. You've now created almost a kind of digital footprint or a digital twin or a digital roadmap of that widget. Perfect.
Sure,
so you now
right.
go and get those. Yeah. So and it's great because you have that kind of content. Now you go away and physically get the parts to be built, but of course they probably need to be put together on situ in where they are. So now you're using that same kind of content to now go into your AR world. So you're still seeing the actual physical pieces, but you're using AR to show you how to do it. Putting the guidance of saying, well, we need to plug this in and do it. Now you've built this kind of widget. And again, you can think of it as a whole manufacturing line. You've used VR to design, you've used AR to build. And as you mentioned before, Raymond, you can now use AR to maintain. And the last step, if it needs to happen, is you can use AR to kind of break it down or decompose it and things like that. So,
right.
Decommission it, I should be saying that's the word I'm grasping for. So you've actually got this kind of XR life cycle that's allowing the same content to be used, whereas before that could be potentially a whole bunch of CAD models that are in 2D that have to be interpreted. It goes off to the people to build it. They may not interpret it correct. So again, it's in 2D, it comes back. You then got to remember how to stick it all together. You can see very quickly how the future using XR and these different technologies within XR can make these kind of processes so much quicker and effective.
Infotainment is at the heart of any journey, delivering all the relevant information essential for the road ahead and providing intuitive visual, auditory, and tactile interfaces to the vehicle subsystems. Microchip's wide variety of automotive solutions, including connectivity, interface, touch, and more, give you the flexibility to design your system any way you imagine. To learn more, visit mouser.com/microchip. Now, I mean, as far as the hardware goes, where do you see that going? I mean, I know, VR. I mean, I have an Oculus. It's this big bulky thing that sits on, that covers half your face and sits on top of your head, and and it's pretty heavy. And I've seen some AR glasses that are akin to the Google Glass and just like a pair of light ski goggles. Where do you see it all going? I mean, will we end up wearing contact lenses that give us information and leave everything free and open?
That's already interestingly been worked on, and you can see some demos of that. So yeah, I think the ultimate aim will be to have something that's so lightweight and you don't know it's actually there.
Right.
I think we're probably away from that at the moment, Raymond, but how quickly technologies, and you've done many a kind of a podcast on the technology, it moves so quickly. So, I can see a day. I think at the moment, if we just focus on the wearable devices, we can actually categorize in the AR space two different types of kind of solutions or two different types of devices. We have the assisted reality device. So this is kind of really like a tablet, but on your head. So it will do the kind of features that a tablet can do now. So you can look at PDFs, you can do videos, you can do some simple kind of step-by-step guides. But it's very much in the kind of a 2D environment, and you're probably using it in a monocular way, so just using one eye. There's a number of devices where you can have, on the side of your face, it comes down, you can look at it, either control it with voice or other ways, touch control.
Right.
But you're basically using it for when you use it, you can pop it back and you carry on with your work. So that's what we've called in the industry assisted reality, and there are a number of devices and solutions for that. But then you look at some of the other devices, and I'm talking about the Microsoft HoloLens and the Magic Leap and Vuzix and Third Eye. There's a number out there that are using kind of or delivering augmented reality solutions. And that's really where you're taking that 3D content. You're physically able to walk around it, in it, over it, however you kind of look at this content, and it's delivering it in that 3D way. You're able to, again, collaborate with other people in your team or anybody in the world to actually look at the same thing at the same time and do that design. Hey, we need that a little bit taller, bigger, smaller, whatever the design kind of process is. And that's where it's been really interesting. And I think where the future probably lies, whilst there's a whole bunch of use cases and problems that can be solved with assisted reality, and we continue to support that because I think it's really, really important. But the real kind of push in technology would be on that augmented side, and you're kind of moving into holograms and holographic stuff where you actually don't even need to use wearable devices. It will actually present it a bit like the kind of Star Trek hologram. There are companies already doing that. Not quite on a commercial scale yet, but so the technology moves so quickly. My point is always going back to what I said before. It's about solving real business problems. So, for enterprises to pick this up, they really need to see what the use case and what the problem's being solved.
And that collaboration that you've mentioned, especially now with, in a post-COVID world, where you have design teams, who don't need to meet or necessarily don't want to meet for one reason or another, or people working remotely, and we've always had people working, different types of groups working in different areas. It sounds like, through augmented reality, they can truly collaborate as opposed to just simply sending files or sending software back and forth.
Oh, absolutely, Raymond. And there's a number of tools already on the market, both in VR and AR. Okay, because again, you're kind of taking the digital content. That's what you're actually changing. You're not changing the physical kind of product. But we see lots of great use cases, lots of great experiences. And I think what it also does, it allows you to collaborate with a whole probably ecosystem that you've never been able to do before. You literally can collaborate with experts in all sorts of different fields, and you'll bring them together in this kind of virtual world. So, we actually, in the next few weeks, I'm running kind of a workshop and demo presentations purely around that design collaboration use case, and it's going to be super exciting.
Yeah, just from my design background, I could see where we're used to collaborating, just saying, hey, write the code, send it to me, and I'll test it and get it back to you, as opposed to, literally real-time collaboration, real-time updates, real-time, design with remote partners.
Yeah, and again, I'm no designer, but from talking to the people in this space, and especially in the kind of slightly more heavier manufacturing bits, they often have to have the kind of CAD expert in with them, and you say, okay, well, we need to kind of move this, or can you do this little bit? And they do it in a sort of 2D way, or flick around on their kind of computer to do it and say, is this what you want? And you go, well, possibly. It's difficult to kind of visualize that in a 2D way. So there's a whole bunch of real benefits I can see from collaboration. And to be honest, a relatively easy use case to kind of bring together. We've got team calls or calls that happen all the time now. It's putting them into that immersive environment, and there's many a company at the moment that's focusing on that. So one of the use cases that we're beginning to see develop at the moment is around inspection. Okay, so when and I've been on manufacturing floors, when a task is done, and especially in regulated industries, task has been done. It could be a maintenance task, it could be a kind of a build task, but because of the importance of it, someone comes and actually checks it, physically checks it. And I've seen this use case where the person's completed the task, has literally a rubber stamp, and then someone will come and check it and have a rubber stamp.
Signs off the work.
Yeah, absolutely. And you can see when some industries, you think of aircrafts and even automotive as well, we want that kind of due diligence and checking to be done. But of course that takes time, and you have to wait for the checker, and so there's an inbuilt delay into getting that manufacturing kind of process done, or whatever the task is done. So one of the kind of use cases we're beginning to see now is about inspection. So what the actual AR system does itself is make sure that task is done completely. And in fact, so much so, it doesn't allow you to go to the next step until that it's signed off by that AR system. So, it's a kind of combination of measurement and kind of depth and allowances that you can have around it, and each kind of task is slightly different.
Right.
But you can imagine the benefits you get from an enterprise perspective, that they can have one person doing it. It's been signed off and checked. That information can also be easily stored and retrieved, because now you've got like a digital footprint of it. And it's a little bit more, Raymond, than just taking a photo. It's actually making sure that the whole task is completed within those tolerances, which is great. I don't think we're there yet, okay? But it's something I can see in the in the immediate future, if there is, if it's such a kind of term, but the next set of use cases that I can see coming into the market. And I think that will really, again, drive more ROI for the companies.
Right. Yeah. It's all about economies of scale, taking that same piece of software, that same, platform, whatever. I think these things probably will be platforms eventually. And using it across multiple operations throughout the manufacturing process, all kinds of benefits come out from that.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right, and it's happening. I think at the moment it's a little bit more piecemeal. People solving. They say, hey, well, we need remote assistance, so they're focusing on that. Some of the kind of more mature companies that we see in the ecosystem are actually creating XR teams and bringing that kind of end-to-end strategy together.
Okay.
So it's a case about not just one thing, how we could do multiple things, but more importantly, I think, is connecting into the core enterprise systems. So if you have a system that creates jobs that need to be done, well, the AR is actually connected into that. So yes, it brings up the job, and that's kind of easy enough to do. But when it's completed, or if there's any issues, that goes back into the PLM or whatever the kind of core systems they've been using to manage their business. And then it becomes a real integrated part of the way that you do business, rather than kind of standalone, which at the moment, I'll be honest, that's where the technology is. It's still kind of being developed. But as I said, the more mature companies are really bringing it in as part of their way of working.
Right, just building it into their process. I mean, as a core competency, rather than something they just bolt on at the end as hey, this should fix this.
What it does do, Raymond, coming to kind of another point, is about some of the potential challenges that companies are experiencing to kind of deploy this. And maybe I could just real quick kind of go through some of those. So,
absolutely, that was actually one of the things I was going to bring up is we talk about some of these futures. How far and what are some of the roadblocks do you see for some of these?
Yeah, and they're all overcomable. That's actually a word, but
it is now.
It is now. Yeah, thank you. So, and again, it differs slightly. So these are different companies will have different challenges, or the priority of them will be different. But, one of the things we see is around security. So companies, especially if they have IP within their design, are suddenly now bringing this kind of camera, but all these depth sensors and this information into their environment and kind of scanning everything.
Right.
Okay. So, what happens to that data? Can they make sure it's still secure and doesn't get out of that environment? I think, Raymond, within the area, we've been having lots of conversations about the kind of scope of AR security, because some of that is just due to your normal IT security policies and things like that. But, there is this added layer or added concern potentially with AR. So we see some companies, as I said, especially ones that create IP through their design, physical design bit, have concerns. Another one is about safety. So the kind of safe use of AR. Suddenly you have something on your face that's kind of distracting you. If you're walking around, you may not see trip hazards, or walk into forklift troughs, sort of things like that. So there's some of the work we've been doing is just, things like simple examples or use cases to say, well, if a person's walking too fast, forward, then take the display away. Okay, turn off the display. And then they probably realize that, hang on a sec, I shouldn't really be focusing on this thing that's just in front of my eyes. I should be focused on my environment. And kind of very, very similar to that is walking backwards. Yeah, you imagine if you're on a big, an aircraft carrier or something with heights, and you're focusing and you want to move back because you want to get a bigger space for your AR bit to show you what should be there, and you fall off the back. So kind of deploying AR safely. There's kind of a whole bunch of things about how long people should be wearing it and bits and pieces. So kind of safety is another area. It
sounds like we're going to see a lot of, as AR becomes more prevalent, a lot of government agencies are going to get, government regulations and things like that are all going to start coming into play.
And that started to happen. You mentioned the stands part, the start, and we're working with many of them. I think it's about making sure that they're relevant. There's lots of standards that have been there for a long time and not actually thought about or kind of come up to date with what's actually happening in the current world. So I think there's an element of that. There's an element of education that we need to do. But of course, we want to make sure that everybody's safe and secure. So yes, there's work to be done in that space. Again, it depends on your use case and how you're actually using AR. I think just another really interesting point, and this gets into slightly kind of almost out of the technology and into the human side. Okay, because we're asking these people to use this technology where, especially the veterans of their jobs, are saying, well, hang on a sec, what? I can do my job. I'm really good at it. I've been doing it for a number of years. And now you're putting this kind of device in front of me. And, are you checking out what I'm doing? And, do I really need it? So, there's very much a kind of a change management part that we need to think about. If we talk about that VR part, you're probably doing training. You may not be trained in it, but in AR, you could be on the actual manufacturing floor. You're doing a proper job. Sorry, not a proper job, but you're doing a proper task when it's needed. So I think there's kind of little subtleties like that we've certainly been aware of in the area and speaking to some of our members, that you really need to get involved, those workers and those people using AR from the very, very start. Listen to them. What problems do they need solving? How can you work with them? And just a little snippet, Raymond, if I can, just Newport News Shipbuilding have been using AR for a number of years. And this is going back to those aircraft carriers. So, and they said, right, we want to implement this. It's basically a checking. So you look at what the work that's been done. Previously, they would have used paper and drawings to say, well, is that correct and stuff like that. It took them a long time to do it. Now they just use a tablet. They can overimpose or superimpose where things should have happened, and really quickly they can see if it's correct or not.
Right.
So the actual use case is perfect, but then suddenly they've got these, as the person was telling the story, kind of 20, 30-year-old veterans who have been on the shipyard, for this period of time, and they've done an amazing job for them. How do you get them to use this technology? And they just did some simple work where they actually got them involved at the very start, and they picked the gnarliest tech phobe, again, within the area. We've done a research project on that recently. And there's a lot of excitement about the kind of different use cases and benefits it can bring. I guess one of the analyses that come out of the research is that we need, as an ecosystem, to work a bit closer. The carriers and the operators that are delivering 5G probably need to get a bit closer to the companies that are delivering AR solutions, so you can really, like you said, that value add, that security, that speed, and being able to do AR in places where you couldn't do AR before. I don't know, in the bottom of a pit somewhere, or in wherever it is where connectivity is not great, but you can create that kind of new network side. So, we're kind of really excited. I think there's some work to be done. I say we're kind of keen to connect the ecosystem, but that's one of the enabling technologies that will drive greater usage and probably awareness as well.
So, based on everything that we've talked about, Mark, there really is life after gaming for VR, AR, or and all the different realities out there.
Absolutely, Raymond. I think my encouragement out to the ecosystem is go and try this stuff. There are lots of opportunities to download kind of applications, and even from an enterprise perspective, go and do some simple stuff. Go and experience what AR can do. It will drive a whole bunch of new ideas that really excite you. And I'm kind of looking forward to when everybody starts to see XR or AR and VR being something which they use on a regular and common basis.
Right, bringing it out of science fiction onto the factory floor.
A perfect summary.
So, Mark, I want to thank you again for spending time with us here on the Tech Between Us. It's been a fascinating discussion on all the different realities.
Thank you, Raymond. It's been a pleasure as well. And we just live in the real world, but the whole virtual world's going to be such an exciting place to also hang out. So thank you for the time.
We hope you've enjoyed this episode of The Tech Between Us. Remember, this podcast is just one part of our original and ongoing content series, Empowering Innovation Together. You can find videos, articles, and more on immersive technology at mouser.com/empowering-innovation. And don't forget to join us for our next episode when we talk designing for security.